So, welcome everybody. I appreciate you coming today. We are going to spend a little bit of time this afternoon talking about the Truman Scholarship specifically, a few related fellowships, and a little bit about what we do in the Office of National Fellowships. I'm jumping back and forth while I'm admitting people. Thanks, man. I can't. So, in the Office of National Fellowships, there's a team of 3 of us here. So, my name is Craig Filer. I'm the director of the office. I've been doing this for 15 years now here at Florida State University, and then Jesse Whelan and Bonnie Garcia Glockner were the associate assistant director, who also worked with me here in the office. I'm not sure what's going on there. No, it's fine. Sorry. You're good. And other folks are here too. So, no, things stop working. Click on the fellowship. I mean, on the PowerPoint and set it up. Cool. I can just slide the window over just. So, thank you. All right. So one of the things we like to start with when we talk about the fellowships process is why in goodness's name would you undertake something that, as you'll see in a few slides, is quite the undertaking, right? And so there's an overarching reason or reasons that we want you to think about fellowship applications and their value and what you're trying to do with your time here at Florida State and how they prepare you for what comes next. And you can see those here. And I'd just like to take a minute to talk about these first as a means to frame our conversation. And while the majority of our conversation today is going to be about the nuts and bolts of the Truman application, and it's going to talk about like what we're writing, this is a lot about why we do the work that we're doing and what we're hoping that you get out of it. And so first and foremost, because we want a fellowships application to give you clarity about your personal values, your academic goals, your career aspirations, how all of those things come together. We want you to improve your writing ability and your communication skills around yourself. We've discovered that there's not a lot of opportunities for you to write in a mentored way about yourself. You're all usually really good about writing about the things that you're studying, and then nothing personal, but you're usually pretty craptacular about writing about yourself. And so we want to get your writing about yourself up on par with your ability to write about the things in your discipline. This will also help prepare you for whatever's coming next, be it graduate school, professional school, cover letters for jobs, whatever it happens to be. And this application in particular will help you to explore in great detail your postgraduate plans. We also hope this is a way that you can build your on-campus network and consider the ways that you have built one, and then what needs to happen to build it out even further. And then also, we hope it opens the door to future fellowship opportunities for you. So I just wanted to go through these before we jump into the meat of the presentation to give you a good frame as what it is we do here and why we do what we do. So that being said, let's talk a little bit about the Truman Scholarship. So the Truman Scholarship, can you move the screen sharing thing? Sorry, having a little production meeting here. Just slide it down to the very bottom. Oh, okay. Thanks. So the Truman Scholarship, it's all about change agency. They really want to find students that want to make a difference in society. They don't spend a lot of time defining what that difference is, what that change agency is. They leave it up to you to bring what you have to the table and to connect it to their mission. But they do want you to eventually be working in public service. It's a very broad definition of public service. It does not necessarily have to be for the government. When the award was originally founded over 40 years ago, it was specifically for people to get into politics, but it has expanded to so much more than that over the years. The way they'll often explain it is if you eventually end up working for a .gov, a .org, or a .edu, you're probably in the right realm. Right? They basically want you to do something in the public sector for the first little bit of your career after graduate school, even if eventually you do go into private enterprise at some point in time. And as you can see in the second point there, they are going to provide you with some financial support for this graduate study. They're going to provide you all kinds of unique and engaging opportunities, and they really want you to make that difference through public service. So they were going to give you $30,000 towards graduate study. The way I like to explain this to you all, some of you are probably in degree in 3, perhaps more in 4. You might be getting a graduate degree while you're here. That is all wonderful. We're talking about what comes after FSU, whether you leave here with 2 bachelor's degrees, a bachelor's degree and a master's degree, 1 bachelor's degree. What they are looking for is to fund what comes next, what comes in what would be your year 5, be it a law school, a graduate program, medical school. If you are getting a master's degree here, you haven't thought about what comes next, that is the conversation I would want to have for you. Because this funding doesn't kick in your traditional senior year, it kicks in the year after that. All right, and we'll talk a little bit about that timeline in just a second. They also give you Truman's, and I will also say $30,000 for some things. If you're going to med school at Harvard, one semester, part of one semester, it's not a lot. And so why would we do this? And it's because of this other stuff. It's the support network that you get through the Truman Scholarship. $30,000 is a generous amount of money, but it is not going to be comprehensive towards a graduate education. But you do get Truman Scholars Leadership Week. That is a week-long orientation for all the new Truman Scholars class. They tend to pick one scholar from every state, and then some states will have two. They get classes of upwards of 60 every year. They take you to this small college in Kansas City, and then to the Truman Library as a culmination graduation program over Truman Scholars Leadership Week, which is always right before Memorial Day, which would be this coming May for you all as you're heading into your third year. You also have the Summer Institute. That is in the year after you technically graduate in your fourth year. You spend the entire summer in Washington, D.C. They do a lot of programming for you as Truman Scholars over the summer, and they're going to help connect you with an internship at .gov, .edu, .org in the general DC area. They've had people, Truman Scholars, work in almost any area of government and public sector that you can imagine in the DC area. And so pretty much anything would be on the table that would be of interest to you. And then there's also a Truman Fellows Program, which is for folks that are later on in their graduate education program. You can apply to do a more intensive fellowship with certain agencies in the government in DC. All right, so to be eligible for this award, you do have to be a US citizen, and you cannot be a resident. You do have to be a citizen. You must be a junior. Now, you're saying, David, Dr. Filer, I'm a senior. I don't care. It's great. I'm so happy that you brought in so much credit, but what they actually define as junior is not how many hours you have. And I will say that's pretty much true for all of the awards we work with. I care, of course, about the number of credits you have, but from a fellowships perspective, they're using traditional labels when it comes to freshman, sophomore, junior, senior. They are thinking first year, second year, third year, fourth year. And so when you see the term junior, what I'm saying is you should be heading into your third fall at Florida State University, right? If you are here because you are in your second year and you have enough credits to qualify as a junior, which is fine, this is good information to have. I will also say this is not your year to apply. You may say to me, Dr. Filer, but I'm graduating in 3 years, so it is my junior year. I'm like, no, it's still your sophomore year. You're just graduating in 3. You apply in your third year. Here's the logical reason for that. Why would you want to apply for an award in what you're saying is your junior year? Because you have one less year of experience than everybody else. So you're not going to be competitive. So it creates an even playing field across the board, across the country. Everyone applies in their third year of undergrad. That way everyone's had the same amount of time to do things, and it creates that nice sense of equity across the board. Nobody's bringing an extra year of experience to the table. So you can see here when you say a student plans to graduate in 2024-25, or a student in his or her third and final year. You also must be enrolled full-time at the time of application at FSU. That's 12 credit hours or more. So the more esoteric eligibility pieces are you do have to be a change agent. And again, change agency is something that you determine what that is. Where do you see a need? Where do you see a desire to make a difference? Again, you have to work .gov, .edu, .org, right? Public interest advocacy. And you do have to plan on earning a master's degree, a doctorate, or a professional degree, law school, med school, MBA, something along those lines. Then they want you to have some experience, of course. And we'll talk about this in relationship to the application in just a moment. But this is sort of an overall, right? Got it. An overall sort of snapshot of the types of experience. They want you, of course, talk today. They want you involved with organizations and activities that are related to your interests. You want to create a picture that the things that you're doing now are preparing you for the things that you want to do as you describe them in the application. You need to talk about your leadership potential in what you discuss in the application. You do want to have a strong academic record. They're looking for top 25% of the class. You do not need a 3.9 to be competitive for this award, but we usually start around a 3.5, 3.6. Socially conscious, have related coursework to the things that you're interested in, and some government experience. We'll put a pin in that. We'll come back to it. Some people are like, but I've never done an internship. It's probably fine. Here's why it's probably fine. What they're looking for is participation in 2 or more of the following. So they like to see campus activities, community activities, government and political activities, all right? So they want to see at least 2 of those. And so student activities includes student government. The way you think about this is if it's happening on campus, primarily, it is a student activity. Student government is a key component of a campus activity. It is not a government activity. It's easy for us to visualize this because we're in Tallahassee. Visually, just move up the hill, pointing to the Capitol. That's a government activity. City Hall, that's a government activity. It can be state, it can be local, it can be county, it can be national, but it does need to be the actual government. Student government, student government, and then government is government, right? And between those 2, of course, community service related activities, all of you are probably doing ServScript in some way, shape, or form. It is not limited to ServScript, but that's always a good place to start when thinking about the type of work that you do in the community. And then, of course, down at the end, partisan political activities and campaigns. We're in an election year. And so they do like to see that you're involved, particularly if it's around an issue that you're passionate about, involved in some sort of partisan political activity, canvassing, voter registration, those sorts of things. All right, so the application is lengthy, and I can divide it into sort of 3 sections for you. There are lists, there are essays, and there is a policy proposal. So the list you can see there, it's of activities. That's basically the resume section of the application. You have short personal essays and then future plans essays, and then a policy proposal. Let's break those down a little bit. And this one. I think our battery's done. There we go. All right, so the lists, I didn't make a slide for those because they're pretty self-explanatory. High school activities, college activities, public service activities, government activities, the same categories we just looked at, as well as a section for awards and honors. Now, you can see the essays here. There are sort of the top half and the bottom half. The top half are about sort of what you're doing and what you're passionate about. You can see that there is an example where you talk about leadership, an essay where you talk about public service, and then the third essay is the problem or need in society you want to address in public service, be it climate change, it can be about incarceration issues, it could be around education, it could be around healthcare inequity, it could be about pretty much anything, whatever it is you are passionate about. Then you're going to connect that to the 3 most significant courses you've taken. And then you're going to prepare and talk about the future a little bit. So there's 3 essays in a row, which map out about a 10-year plan for you post FSU. So the first of which is you want to talk about that graduate program. And when they say graduate program, do remember that also means professional programs. So it could be master's, PhD, law school, med school, MBA, MPA, whatever it happens to be. Then you have 2 more essays. One is what are you going to do right after that graduate program? And again, not after you graduate with a master's degree from FSU, but rather what do you do in that year 5 and on. And then they have one, what do you want to do 5 to 7 years later? And so what they're asking you to do is to hypothesize what a 10-year career trajectory might look like for you in this arena. Like if this is the area I'm going to address, if I'm going to look at climate change, I would go to get this master's degree in environmental public policy from Georgetown. Then I would get a job at the Environmental Protection Agency right out of that, and then maybe work on to the National Oceanographic and Atmospheric Association after that. This is not a contract. The folks at Truman do not think you have written this in stone, signed off on it in blood. It is actually just a hypothetical one instance of what you could do for your future to be a change agent. One of the ways, and you'll hear me say this metaphor multiple times, one of the metaphors I use is it's like going clothes shopping and trying on a suit. You want to see what the suit looks like. I'm going to try on the suit. What will this look like if I decide to follow this path? How does it fit? How does it feel? Is it me? Is it not? And sometimes, quite honestly, an outcome from one of these applications is that, this isn't the right fit. And that is a perfectly fine outcome for one of these applications. In fact, sometimes it's a very good outcome, because learning what you don't want to do is almost as valuable as learning what you do want to do. Then finally, you have a personal statement. That's the last one there. What additional personal information do you wish to share with the Truman Scholarship Foundation? I will stop here real quick to also mention you will all get a link probably tomorrow, because you've registered, that will have the link to this PowerPoint, to this presentation, so you'll be able to come back and access it. There's not a quiz after this. You don't have to remember any of this. This is just to give you the overview, and we'll end with some next steps in terms of setting up a time to perhaps come in and talk to me or one of the folks in the office. Okay, as I mentioned before, there is a policy proposal. The policy proposal, if you're not a policy wonk, it's nothing to stress about. They do not expect everybody that registers and applies for the Truman to actually know how to write policy proposals. They want to see how you, if given the opportunity to talk to and persuade a person in power over an issue, how do you approach them? How do you persuade them around a particular issue? And that's really all the policy proposal is. You all actually are going to be much more in your wheelhouse with this, because here's where you get to write about something, and you get to demonstrate your academic prowess, your ability to write about a topic and an issue that you're passionate about. And this usually comes together quite well for most applicants, even when they don't have policy experience. It's very detailed in the application, the way they present it to you. I would also mention that the essays, there's a lot of them, but they're all very short. They are all a paragraph or less. And so it's not like you're having to write 10 pages worth of material about yourself, but rather it's about learning how to write very concisely and precisely and actively around one particular thing. Now, there's 3 letters of recommendation with this, and one is going to be around leadership, one is around public service, and one is around your academic preparation and your scholarship. This is a little different than most awards where you've probably worked with, where you're like, oh, you need people to actually just talk about how good of a student you are. Here, they build it on all 3 pillars, and so you have a letter for each. The leadership and the service letters do not need to be from a professor, right? The expectation that your leadership experience may be through the Boys and Girls Club of America or something, that the letter writer, the appropriate one, would probably be the person that worked with you at Boys and Girls Club, not from a professor who knows that you worked at Boys and Girls Club. So the only expectation is that the academic letter, the one about your scholarly work and your preparation, that would need to come from a professor here at the university, or from another university, honestly. No letters from peers. That happens a lot. Someone's like a dance marathon, and there's no real adult person over it. The head of dance marathon's another student. Unfortunately, that doesn't work for this level. And I understand the context of those. Again, I've been here a very long time, and I work with students to help them figure out who is going to be the best person to approach for a letter when it seems like there is not an answer for who the adult person and not the peer person would be to write it. And then we also need official transcripts. I will say this, we don't need the official ones in the first round of applications. That's just when we turn them into the office in DC in the spring. All right, that gets us to what is the process like, all right? So each year we're allowed at FSU, every school across the country is allowed to nominate 4 students. And again, this is also very cool. Much like everyone's in their 3rd year, every school, regardless of what school it is, can only put 4 students forward for this. So it's a very equanimous process across the country. So Yale gets 4, Harvard gets 4, UF gets 4, we get 4, Duke gets 4, everybody gets 4. For that reason, we start the process now because we have an internal deadline of November 1st. That's a little over 2 months from now. And all of your application materials are due on November 1st. And that includes the entire application, all the pieces I just showed you, your unofficial transcript, and your 3 letters. The reason it's this early is because we interview everyone that applies and finishes an application. Our committee of faculty and community members are very passionate about that. They like talking to all of you. There is no pre-vetting. If you finish the application and you are satisfied with it, we will have you talk to the committee. The committee will select the 4 people, but we need to have those 4 students selected before the end of fall semester. So that November 1st deadline, it is firm, it is hard, it is set. So just keep that in mind. Can you get an application done in 2 months? Absolutely. Students do it every year. We have this workshop this same Thursday every fall. Students come to the process right now. You are not behind by any stretch of the imagination. This is the perfect time to get started if we haven't met or talked about this yet. Now, you can also apply because they do have a student from every, or scholar from every state. If you're from out of state, you have the option of applying in your home state or applying through Florida. If you're one of our nominees, that's a conversation we would have one-on-one as we get closer to the end of the application process. For Florida resident students, you apply in Florida because it is your home state. You compete with the other students in the state of Florida. The national deadline, that's my deadline, that's going to be in February. That's on February 6th. And so the month of January, if you're one of the nominees, we actually work and do some peer review and some other things throughout January to put some fine tuning on your application before we turn it in. Then there are interviews. I think they're finally going back to in-person interviews this coming year, if I'm remembering correctly. I may be wrong about that. They've done Zoom for the past 4 now, but I think they might be coming back to in-person. And when they do that, they do it in Atlanta, in our region. So Florida, Georgia, South Carolina, and Alabama. And then we have our 2022 Truman Scholar. This is Abril Hunter. So Abril, the reason I have her up here is, aside from the fact that she won it, Abril is very typical of a Truman applicant at this point. The very first conversation Abril and I had went something like this. Dr. Feiler, Craig, I don't think I'm competitive for this. You are probably thinking the same thing or some iteration of it. You can see she was wrong, obviously. And it's because, in my experience with this, you all hold the folks like this up to some sort of pedestal, which it's accomplished, absolutely. But she worked really hard on her stuff and fine-tuning her message about who she was, did a lot of self-exploration and good communication. But she was not doing anything different than anything you all are doing. Her topics were probably a little different than yours, but she was just doing regular FSU student engaged servant leadership, right? That is what you are doing, I'm assuming, if you are here. You may define leadership differently, you may approach service differently, but my guess is you are doing things that would, at the very least, warrant further conversation to see if your values, skills, goals, and experiences align with Truman's enough to undertake an application. Abril, what she works on is environmental justice and environmental racism, and is actually starting her master's program at Georgetown University this fall, where she'll be getting a master's in environmental policy, if I'm remembering that correctly. And honestly, she would have gotten into Georgetown with or without the Truman Scholarship. And that's sort of the true mark of the work that she does and that you all do as Florida State University students. And that's one of the sort of takeaways from here, that regardless of the outcome of this award, you are doing the things that will set you up for success for whatever that graduate program is you're looking at. I've done this long enough to know that that is a true statement. It may not be able to be universally applied to everyone, but it is pretty reliable in terms of you all are doing the deal. So you're preparing yourself to go on to do the things that you want to do. What's next? Okay, real quick before I see if we have any questions, there is another award. I'd just like to point this one out. This is the PPIA, Public Policy and International Affairs Fellowship. So if you are a policy wonk, or if you're on the Zoom today and you're interested in international affairs, there's a summer institute which will come up for summer 24. You have to be in your 3rd year again. You have to want to do a professional career in public service. And you have to be intent on completing a master's degree, probably in public affairs or international affairs. They have 5 consortium graduate schools. You can see them here: Minnesota, Carnegie Mellon, Princeton, UC Berkeley, University of Michigan. Here they give you $1,000 of a stipend plus full tuition for this summer institute. And if you go to one of these 5 graduate schools, they give you a scholarship towards it as well. This one usually has a deadline right around November 1st too. The application materials are very similar. And so I'd just like to throw this one in here, because if you are interested in public policy or international affairs, this is the same basic cloth of material, and it's the same timeline. And so it's just another opportunity without having to duplicate much in terms of effort. There's one other one I like to mention to you, just to put it on your radar. It's not like closely affiliated with the other two. This one, the application, it usually is due in early January. They sometimes move it around, but this is a summer opportunity. There's both a domestic one and an international one. You can see there's various countries here. And it's to look at discrimination and resistance, as well as examples of how different minority groups exist in spaces, both globally, which we would call human rights, and domestically, which we would call civil rights. And so they're looking for students, much like Truman, from any major. You can bring your own experience to the table. This is just one other summer opportunity, and a really cool one, both domestically and internationally, to put on your radar. Oh, I forgot, and this one. If you're in the College of Social Sciences and you're not aware of this, you should apply for social science scholars. This is a program only open to students in the COSS and so forth. There's a couple more letters on there. You have to have at least 3 semesters remaining. So again, this is usually for folks going into their 3rd year. They put you in a class in the spring with 2 professors who've been doing this class since the program started. It's about 10 years old now, I think. And then they actually give you some funding to do a very cool individual study or project next summer. So if you are in the College of Social Sciences, political science, economics, or national affairs, what have you, do make sure you're aware of this program as well. The application is usually due, I want to say mid-October, give or take. All right. Oops. Yep. Okay. So here's contact information for me, for the other folks in the office. What I would recommend, if this is interesting to you, to shoot me an email so we can have a conversation to save a little back and forth. I don't use scheduling on Campus Connect, but rather I schedule my own appointments. I will tell you, I am basically doing new student orientation stuff all day tomorrow, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday of next week. So I'll pick back up student appointments starting on Thursday of next week. So a week from today. So if you want to meet with me and talk about Truman, what I would need from you is your availability next Thursday and Friday, plus the first week of classes. So we can schedule a 30-minute meeting just to talk and get a sense of what you might be interested in with the application. We'll talk about the application a little bit. If you reach out to me, I'll send you the PDFs of the actual application back so you can look through them. And then that way we can just jump in and talk about how you would interact or apply with the application materials themselves. All right, so that being said, any questions for the chat? Or for so good. All right. So if you have individual questions, certainly email me directly. We will be sending out, like I said, a follow-up tomorrow. That will probably come from Bonnie, maybe from Jesse. And you can respond to that. I'll make sure my email is in that response as well. And I'll have a link to this information. And so I really hope you got something out of this. The main thing is I don't want you to, what I want you to take away from this is the potential that you have for success here. These are very competitive awards. And if the only reason to undertake them was winning the awards, this would be a very futile job that I have. But this is an amazing job that I have working with you all in these applications. And it's for those reasons that we started with. It's for you learning about yourself, learning to advocate for yourself, learning to fine-tune the messaging about yourself. So it loops you back to becoming a better advocate about yourself. Over the years, students continually surprise me in the sense of the amazing things that they're doing, but they do not surprise me in their ability to get them done, because I know you all have this in you. And so if you're looking at this and thinking this might be a bit much, don't let that stop you from having a preliminary conversation. If your immediate reaction is, I don't know if that's me, again, don't let it stop you from the preliminary conversation, because you may be right. This may not be a good fit, but we work with a bunch of different awards, and some of those may be a little more attractive to you. The main thing is say yes. Right? Say yes, buy into and invest in yourself, which is ultimately what this is.